For almost 4 years, the second day of every month looked the same for me. I'd open my banking app, transfer 2,000 to my parents, and then move on with my day. There was never a ceremony around it. No big conversation. Just something that had quietly become routine. They were struggling after my dad's hours were cut, and my mom's small business never quite recovered after the pandemic. At first, it was temporary, just until things stabilize, my mom had said. That was the word she used every time. Stabilize, so I helped. Not just with the transfers, sometimes groceries. Sometimes covering a utility bill when things got tight. Once or twice a repair on the house. I didn't resent it. At least I didn't think I did. Helping them felt like the obvious thing to do. The strange part is that over time, the gratitude disappeared. Not dramatically, just slowly. Quietly. The transfers stopped being something we talked about. They simply existed. One Friday evening I stopped by their house without warning. I had been at a store nearby and picked up a few bags of groceries for them. Nothing unusual about that. The living room lights were on when I pulled into the driveway. Music was playing inside, muffled through the walls. Through the window, I could see my parents and 2 of their friends sitting around the coffee table with drinks. I figured I'd just drop the groceries in the kitchen and leave them to their evening. When I stepped inside, no one noticed me right away. The music and conversation were loud enough that I stayed in the hallway near the kitchen, setting the bags on the counter. That's when I heard my dad say my name. At first it sounded normal. Just part of the conversation. Then someone asked him how they were managing lately with bills. My dad laughed. Not bitterly, not sadly. Just easily. "Oh, we're fine," he said. "Our kid sends us $2,000 every month." One of their friends whistled. 2,000. My mom laughed then, the kind of loose laughter that comes after a couple drinks. "Yeah," she said. "Our personal ATM." Everyone at the table laughed. Not cruelly, just comfortably. Like it was a clever joke. I remember standing in the hallway with one hand still resting on a grocery bag, listening as the conversation kept moving. They talked about upcoming trips. A new TV they'd been thinking about buying. A restaurant they'd tried recently. No one said anything about struggling. No one sounded worried about money. The phrase stayed in the air though. Our personal ATM. I didn't walk into the living room. I picked the grocery bags back up, walked out the same door I came through, and put them back in my car. The whole drive home felt strangely quiet. Not dramatic, not angry. Just quiet. Over the next few days I kept replaying the moment in my head, trying to decide if I'd misunderstood it. Maybe it was just a joke. Maybe alcohol made it sound worse than it was. But the more I thought about it, the more something settled in my chest that hadn't been there before. For years I'd treated the support like temporary help. But they talked about it like infrastructure. Something permanent. Reliable. Something that simply existed. The following week I sat down with my laptop and opened the list of automatic payments I had connected to my account. The monthly transfer, their electricity bill, the internet plan, and one larger payment I had quietly been covering for almost a year, the rent. When their lease had renewed last year, my parents couldn't quite meet the new price. I had stepped in as the third-party payer so the landlord would approve the renewal. They never had to worry about it again after that. Until now, canceling everything didn't take long. A few clicks, a few confirmations. Afterward, I just closed the laptop. I didn't send a message. I didn't make an announcement. For the first time in years, I simply stopped. A week passed. Then another. I saw the first call from my mom on a Tuesday afternoon. I didn't answer. 2 hours later, my dad called. Then a message appeared. Did something happen with the rent payment? I didn't respond. More messages followed that evening. Confusion at first. Then concern. Apparently they had been away, visiting relatives for the weekend. When they came home, there was a notice from the property manager taped to the door. The rent payment hadn't gone through. The third-party account that had been covering it had withdrawn authorization. They were asking what had happened. The messages weren't angry yet, just puzzled, like something in the system had malfunctioned. I read them without replying. For a long time I just sat there with my phone in my hand, thinking about that night in their living room. The laughter. The easy way my mom had said it, our personal ATM. Eventually the call stopped. A few days later my dad left one final voicemail. His voice sounded more careful than usual. "Hey, we're trying to figure out what's going on with the payments. Call us when you can." No accusation. No apology either. Just uncertainty. I still haven't called back. Not because I hate them. And not because I want them to struggle. But because something changed that night in the hallway. For years I thought I was helping my parents through a difficult chapter. It turns out they thought they'd found a permanent solution. And once I understood that difference, the silence felt like the only honest place to start.